Hi guys, I am filming two of these back to back because I've been super busy and just haven't gotten around doing the first one, and I finished a second book since then. So, oh my goodness, you can't see it, but my cat is investigating the books. Hi, Percy. So the first one, I'll make them separate videos, but I'm wearing the same clothes in both, just so you know. Let it be. We also have the Christmas tree now, so nice and festive for them. So at least there's that. But so the first book that I'm gonna get into here is Milkweed by Jerry Spinelli. This is a young adult book, and it. Apologies if. Yep, get in the tree. Go, Percy. So this is a young adult book. It's set in Poland during World War II, Warsaw to be exact, and it follows a young boy. I'm not sure we ever actually know his true real name, but his experience kind of as an orphan living in Warsaw and eventually ending up in the Jewish ghetto. So it is a fiction, but it's based off of lots of true accounts and actual history. So, I mean, historical fiction, there you go. These were always my favorite types of books growing up. Super random, but there's a book called Assassin about the assassination of Lincoln. And it's fictional. It's a historical fiction, but I loved that book when I was younger, so it kind of falls in line that I also enjoyed this one. I enjoy the genre a lot. I really appreciate stories told that have a factual base. I love fantasy and sci-fi and all of that too, of course. I mean, it's a different need, I guess, that they fill, but I do have a super soft spot for historical fiction. So as I said, it's set during World War II. It's a young boy in the ghettos, so it's, of course, not a cheery read. Everything about it is kind of sad, even if you don't realize it at first. If you stop and think about it, it kind of sets in a little bit how devastating it all is. But I'm so sorry. Come on. She's not gonna stop, but so diving into spoilers a little bit, so heads up. I love the way this is written. One of the things I was reading about it online after finishing it, because I couldn't help it, it was one of those books that as soon as I finished reading it, I felt the need to start looking up all of the events. And of course, I know what happened in World War II, but I don't think I had much detail about the ghettos. To be honest, it's one of those things that in school it was talked about, it was acknowledged that they existed, but then a lot of the focus was shifted much more towards the work camps and the death camps. So very close by, you have Auschwitz-Birkenau, and that's the one that I learned the most about. That's where a lot of the focus is when it comes to teaching about World War II, I think, at least in my experience and my public schooling, which may not have been the best, but that's beside the point. So it was interesting to me once I finished the book to start looking up these events and kind of. You are not helping the vibe, Percy. My goodness, stop it. Just really learning more about the ghettos themselves, as well as more overall stuff. So learning more about the big events, such as them emptying the ghettos, the big oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. I finished this book oh goodness, it's probably been a month ago now. Now I can't remember the name of it, when they took a very, very large amount of the ghetto and sent them to Birkenau. But I mean, I guess if you're curious, you can look it up. And then also just learning more about like the whole final solution situation, like game plan, and learning about it more from the perspective of like widespread, planned out, just like terrible, versus focusing in only on like Auschwitz. So that was interesting, and I think I learned from it. Even it being a young adult book, I think there are things to learn from it, especially if, similarly to me, most of your education around it in the past was focused in certain areas that weren't necessarily the ghettos. So that's one thing. And another thing is that I love the way it's written from a child's perspective, and it makes it, this is what I was getting at earlier when I was reading stuff about it. They were saying that it makes it accessible to children because by writing it from a child's perspective, a lot of these events that are super terrible, they're described, but it's more a matter of fact. It's more of like, yes, there's a dead body on the ground, but it isn't gory. There aren't these long like internal dialogues about what's happening, because he doesn't really understand himself what's happening, and approaching it from the angle of a child who doesn't understand what's going on and doesn't get it. I mean, he actually idolizes, they call him the jackboots, so he totally idolizes the Nazis before he really starts to see more and realize, like, these aren't good people, they aren't doing this for good, this isn't a new exciting home, because as a child he doesn't pick out the bad immediately. He doesn't view it as like this big dangerous thing that's happening, and he doesn't comprehend what's going on, and there's no precedent for it really in this context. So I mean, you couldn't expect a child to quickly realize what it is that's going on if there's not somebody there telling them, giving them these thoughts and these ideas. And this narrator, he's kind of on his own to an extent. He does have some guidance, and there's a twist to a thought, of course, towards the end, that I'll leave that one for if you decide to read the book. But overall, he's very much alone, despite this help that he does receive from adults, and he doesn't realize what is going on. And that is like kind of beautiful in its own way, reading about these terrible events from the perspective of someone who is living them, but also isn't understanding just like how bad it really is. And it also, like I say, opens it up for younger readers. It's a good introduction to the events that happen, because it allows you to introduce the events to them in a less, I don't want to say dramatic, because it kind of should be dramatic, but in a way that they can understand a little bit more, and then you can walk them through the events of, so this is what our narrator sees, let's put a little more context to it, so that they gain a better understanding. But it makes it very approachable. It makes it, dare I say, easier to read, not having all of the gruesome details forced upon you from the very start is kind of helpful when it comes to reading about this sort of material, particularly with a young audience. So I think it's extremely well done in that regard. I found it insanely interesting. I've always found World War II and the surrounding events extremely interesting. Obviously not in a good way, but it's one of those things, it's like you don't want to see it, but you can't look away. Like a train wreck, that's the saying, right? It's like a train wreck, you can't look away. So I definitely, if you are interested in learning a little bit more, like I say, in particular about the ghettos, then I think this is a good read. If you are looking for more of an introductory book for the topic, for maybe somebody who's younger, but is interested and wants to learn, I think it's a good book. Or even if you're just an adult reading it for the sake of it, because I picked this up. I'll be honest, I saw this at a thrift store. It still has like the grease pen on the binding. So I just literally was like, oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, Spinelli, I know that name. I think I read some of his books when I was younger. So I just picked it up, not even thinking about it, and then had no idea how big of a journey it would take me on. So I think it's a fantastic read. I would absolutely recommend it if you're interested in the topic. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and I'm going to move on to the next book. So if you want to see that, I guess go check out my next video. Bye, guys.